Just like Photoshop, Adobe Bridge offers workspaces, and workspaces save your panel positions. If you look at the Bridge window, I'm in the Essentials workspace right now, the default. But if I click Film Strip, I get an alternate view which shows me favorites, the ability to filter, and a bar with my content area at the bottom. So I could click once and get a large preview of each of my images. If I go to the Metadata workspace, you'll notice that I see keywords, file name, date created, size, and file format, also rating and label. If I stretch this area with the two dotted gray lines, I could see all of the workspaces if your resolution is high enough, or you could choose Window Workspace to see them. A few others that are of note is the Light Table layout, which gives you just a large content area, kind of like looking at a sheet of film in the olden days when we used film to get a look at all the images taken on a given day. The folders layout has favorites and folders and large content, so it gives you a bigger area for navigation and seeing your computer or connected disks and digging into your operating system. I have a Kelly workspace that I created, and this was born from the Essentials workspace. So with Essentials, I started customizing this by dragging and dropping preview, metadata, and keywords all on top of one another, and then this area is no longer needed. So I stretched it with this dark gray bar to the hard right, and I usually click on preview and click an image, and the larger you make the preview area, the more detail you'll see. I almost always shoot for the preview to take up about half my screen, so I could still navigate files and folders down here. I also aim for about 4 or 5 images across. That seems to work well on most monitors with large resolution. However, if you have a very big monitor, go for more, whatever is visible to you. If I've modified Essentials and I'm getting ready to teach a class where people have never launched Bridge, I'll often choose Window, Workspace, and Reset Standard Workspaces. In fact, once I got my panels arranged this way, under Window, Workspace, New Workspace was how I created the Kelly workspace. So if I were to do that again, let's just call this number 2 and hit save, it pops up on my workspace switcher. I don't need it any longer, so I could choose Window Workspace, Delete Workspace, and delete number 2, then go back to my Kelly workspace, or in Essentials, it remembers how I positioned it unless you do Window Workspace Reset Standard Workspaces. So you don't need to actually save a workspace for Bridge or even Photoshop to remember where you left your panels. It's just handy in case you adjust your screen or panels and forget where you've left them. This quickly resets them. To finish up with the Bridge window, a few things of note are along the top, you can navigate back a folder. So I went up to my Images folder, which was actually where I was working before I started recording. So it's not back really up a level, it's back to the last location I looked in. If I go forward, now I'm in Customizing Photoshop, which is actually on my desktop in the folder called Lesson Files. I can see that by scrolling here. I can also see that on the path bar. It shows me exactly what folder Bridge is pointing to. And a few other handy icons. You can actually click on an image, and there's a little menu that lets you reveal a recent file, or open this in Photoshop or InDesign, and I can see images that I was working on recently. This little boomerang icon flips me back to Photoshop, and I usually get back to Bridge with Command-Tab on the Mac or Alt-Tab on Windows. It switches between running programs, but you can also be in Photoshop and choose File, Browse in Bridge, or on the Mac, Command-Option-0, on Windows, Control-Alt-0. Just past the boomerang is your camera importer. So to pull images in from your smartphone, a point-and-shoot digital camera, or even a camera card, you can hit that button. It's the same as choosing File, Get Photos from Camera. And a few other icons that are helpful. There's a button to open in Camera Raw. If I have an image that was taken on an iPhone, which this one was, and I wanted to do more sophisticated edits on it, I actually run everything I work in through Camera Raw. I could hit this little aperture looking icon and use all the features of the RAW dialog. On JPEGs and TIFFs, they do not need to be shot in RAW. If you are capturing on a high-end camera that does have the ability to shoot in RAW, when you double-click that image, it will open in RAW automatically. But if I had a JPEG or a TIFF, when I double-click it, it defaults to Photoshop. I usually run it through Camera Raw in Bridge or in Photoshop before I even touch it in Photoshop. So I'm hitting Command-Tab or Alt-Tab to get back to Bridge, and the last two icons that are helpful is Rotate Image. If I had something in the wrong orientation, or maybe I wanted to turn this champagne glass on its side, I can hit Rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise or Rotate 90 degrees clockwise. This, however, is not permanent until you open and save the file. When I double-click it in Photoshop, now I could do a Save As, and typically I save as a Photoshop file and it will commit to the rotation. I'll close it, I won't save, I'll flip back to Bridge, and I'll put that back where I found it by hitting the Rotate button again. So take a look at your Bridge workspace, move the panels where you like them, and choose Window Workspace, New Workspace to save that forever. Also experiment with the built-in workspaces. And explore the buttons or options you have at the top of the Bridge window to become more familiar with this as your interface.